welcome back to the Deep Six Wrestling Podcast. It is Thursday, September 15th, and we are back. This is the first podcast we've done since All Out. And I'm Pat. If you're new here, thank you to subscribing to the podcast if you're going to. If you're not subscribing, then oh well. But if you're listening to this, you're listening either on streaming services or on our YouTube channel. The podcast goes up on our YouTube as well as streaming services like Spotify, Stitcher, Anchor, Overcast, Apple, Google, wherever you might find podcasts, you can find us. So please consider subscribing wherever you're listening to, whether it's YouTube or on streaming services. If you are on YouTube, consider, or if you're not listening on YouTube, consider switching to YouTube. You can subscribe and help us hit 250 subscribers. So we'd appreciate that as we continue to grow the podcast and deliver more and more content. So there was no content from us last week. I was on vacation, so there was no AEW. Ryan was also unavailable due to also being on vacation, so there was no Impact. And Rob, I edit the podcasts, so there was no SmackDown review from Rob. So we'll see what comes out this week, but you have me back. I'm assuming Ryan and Angela will reunite for the Impact podcast. I don't know if Rob will be back with the SmackDown one. And then, next week there is Victory Road for Impact, their next Impact Plus special. I will be watching it live for work. I'm doing a review for the Sportster. So maybe if Ryan watches live or if Angela watches, the three of us will do something. But if not, then Ryan and Angela will talk about it on the following week's episode of the Impact Wrestling Power Hour. Next week's Grand Slam, we're not going this year. We did go last year, but I don't believe we're going this year. So, we will have a review out for it after the show, unlike last year where I believe we did it a few days later. As far as pay-per-views, I don't think there's anything coming up that we're going to be reviewing besides the Victory Road show. So, maybe whenever the New Japan Domination of Power events are, we'll cover those. But for now, that's basically it. So you can also follow us over on Twitter at Deep6Wrestling without the G. We post when there's new content coming over there, or when there's not new content, we won't we won't tweet for a week. So, anyways, it feels good to be back. My allergies are killing me, so if I sound a little nasally, that is why. But I am alive. Excuse me. Alright, so we're going to jump into here. So I missed Dynamite last week. I was at Universal Studios Orlando for Halloween Horror Nights for the first time ever. That was a wonderful experience. If for some reason you are also into Halloween Horror Nights and you haven't gone yet, I will say I absolutely recommend going to the Dead Man's Pier Winter's Wake house, as well as the Halloween house and Fiesta de Chupacabras. Monsters Collide, classic monsters, and The Weekend were also pretty good. I would skip the bug house, bugs eaten alive. Definitely, you don't need to do it. I did not get to do the Horrors of Blumhouse, which that was one I did want to do with the Black Phone and Freaky, and I didn't get to do Descendants of Destruction, Hellblock Horror, Spirits of the Coven, but I did do 6 of the 10. So I did feel pretty accomplished for my first outing. But because I was doing that, I did miss out on Dynamite, so I did miss out on the fallout from All Out. So I missed the new Trios champions being crowned, which is Death Triangle, which meant that Pac is the first ever person in AEW to hold 2 AEW titles at once, a pretty big accomplishment for the bastard. As well as the announcement of the Tournament of Champions, and that kicking off with Danielson versus Hangman 3. So, but let's dive into tonight's show, where we kick things off with the beginning of round 2 of this Tournament of Champions with Sammy Guevara versus Jon Moxley. And this is for AEW Dynamite from September 14th, so last night. We had a very, very strong crowd here. We had some nice commentary from Excalibur, pointing out the fact that these two have not faced off in a singles match in over 2.5 years, and Regal hyped up Sammy from seeing him work years ago in the Performance Center. When we come back from the first picture-in-picture, the two come off the top with a butterfly suplex as Moxley tries to lock in a Kimura lock, but Sammy transitions into a Boston Crab. Moxley gets out and eats an enziguri from Sammy in the corner, as Guevara fires off with a springboard cutter for a very close 2 count. The GTH gets looked for by Sammy, but Moxley slides off the back and locks in the Bulldog choke. Sammy looks to fight out before John just drops the hammer and anvil elbows. We get the King Kong lariat from Moxley, but Sammy counters with a standing Spanish fly for another near fall. This is a great counter. This is just very good stuff. Up top, Moxley sends Sammy flying across the ring with an avalanche German suplex as Ty Mello and Anna Jay make their way to the ring. Anna distracts the ref as she rips off her jacket and throws it into the ring, distracting Bryce as Ty gets in and gives a low blow to Moxley. Sammy rolls him up and Moxley kicks out at 2. Guevara then goes high with a senton attempt but misses as Moxley slides out of the way. He attempts to roll up on Guevara, but Sammy kicks out. The GTH gets looked for again, but Moxley counters out and lands a Death Rider out of nowhere. John Moxley wins and advances to the finals of the Tournament of Champions next week at Arthur Ashe Stadium. I thought this was good, not great. As you can tell by my notes, I only took notes after the first picture-in-picture. This definitely started slower than expected, but I thought the second half of this match was really good from these guys. And with the match we're getting, it made sense. Grand Slam needed some big matches, and they did go the route of giving us the biggest match possible. I do wonder if Kenny Omega hadn't been suspended. Obviously, he was supposed to go over to Japan for the Tokyo Game Show. Would they have kept him in America to do this Tournament of Champions? And if so, would they have gone the route of doing Danielson Omega 2 at Grand Slam again 1 year later? I feel like they might have. But obviously, we'll never know. But yeah, a good start to Dynamite. I enjoyed Moxley and Guevara's chemistry in the latter half of this match. And again, I still like Ty and Anna as heels. I've enjoyed Ty as a heel since she turned, and Anna, I just feel like it has added more personality for her. She was just like the most generic babyface wrestler. I feel like she never really showed off her personality on TV. So I just feel like her as a heel, at least she has like a character. After this, we would go to, it was very weird because this match ended and Tony Schiavone and Excalibur are reacting like MJF is about to take over the show backstage. We go to commercial. And then we come back and MJF just comes out for a promo. I don't know what happened here, but there felt like there was some level of miscommunication with what was going on. Anyways, MJF comes out here. Big reaction for him. And he cuts them off. He says to cut the music. And he tells the crowd to shut their fat mouths up. MJF says that he has not slept once since he met Moxley in the ring last week because he saw the look in John's eyes. He had the look of a man with no fear, and it pisses MJ off because Moxley must have confused him with someone else, and notes that the podium and the MJF 2020 signs are gone. He isn't the same kid Moxley faced 2 years ago during the pandemic at All Out 2020, I believe. Yeah. Moxley is playing a character and is a joke, while he is not. He says Moxley built a great character, which is why the moron fans chant for him every week. They can chant all they want, but he will never buy it. He knows that Moxley is still the scared little poor boy from Cincinnati, saying that the only difference is that now he can drown his sorrows in alcohol like a worthless drunk. He will give him credit for kicking the habit and getting sober. Mox slayed his demons, but the problem is that MJF's brain is far more dangerous than Moxley's disease. This is a message for Jericho and Danielson as well, saying that bad things happen to anyone who gets in his way. He suggests that Moxley skips Arthur Ashe next week because he doesn't think Moxley should win his AEW championship. MJF then states that he is John Moxley's demon. He is the demon that Moxley cannot slay, And then he introduces the firm. And I'm going to pause here because basically two different promos here. So this feels like they are setting up the story for Full Gear as MJF versus Jon Moxley. He's cutting the promos on Moxley. And, like, the fact that he just kind of slid in, oh, yeah, Jericho and Danielson, this goes for you, too. It does throw me off a bit, especially because we know that Moxley was supposed to be on vacation for 6 weeks, or is just supposed to be off for 6 weeks. So, like, I feel like the guy deserves it. My hope, spoiler alert, Bryan Danielson wins the main event tonight. My hope is that we get Danielson winning the AEW World title next week, because it's going to be a short reign. MJF is most likely beating whoever wins this title. I don't need another short Jon Moxley reign. I'll take a short Danielson reign. And it's also a fresh match. I feel like if MJF wins... So basically, you have Danielson get the win next week. He's already going into it probably as the underdog, just because Moxley's a 2-time AEW champ, and Danielson's now going to be selling the knee injury from Jericho tonight. I feel like Danielson wins. It's seen as kind of an upset, and then Moxley can take some time off, and then Danielson loses to MJF, and then Moxley can challenge MJF. I feel like that makes more sense, so I hope that's the direction we go, and we don't just get Moxley wins and then loses again. Just let the man take a break for a little bit. He deserves it. But really good promo from MJF here. And then he introduces Stokely Hathaway, who he says is his best friend. And out comes Stokely Hathaway with the firm. They have a good theme song, I will say that. And they are the first ever stable on retainer. And then MJF leaves. He's not with them for the rest of this promo, so it does feel like this is going to eventually be something where, like, the services of the firm get bought out by somebody other than MJF. Who it is, I don't know. The only, like, people in canon that are, like, rich are Toni Khan, MJF, and then Ari Daivari. And Ari Daivari has his own faction, so I guess we'll see, but interesting concept here. And so we have Stokely Hathaway and Ethan Page, the Gun Club, Lee Moriarty, and W. Morrissey. And they were the young men that helped MJF capture the poker chip at the all-out casino ladder match. Stokely gets the mic and says that it is not Sunday, but they're going to hear some gospel. And he tells the story about how he first met with MJF about this new group, saying that he flew from Orlando to New York, praying and finding the solution in this new stable as MJF's new support system, who will be getting opportunities for themselves in the process. Everything that Stokely has done since Double or Nothing has been a lie. It's been a hustle. He's kicked it with Britt Baker and Jamie Hayter, and hung out with the House of Black while living it up with our Black Queens. But blackmail is what turns him on and wakes him up in the morning. He says that Morrissey wants to do whatever he wants. Stokely hugs him and says that he loves him, which is kind of funny. He says that he appreciates and loves Big Bill. Lee Moriarty's time is now to become a star, and he should bring honor back to the ROH Pure Championship. The Guns are not boys, they are men, and they no longer want to walk in the shadows of their broke-ass daddy, as they want to become the AEW World Tag Team Champions. And last but not least, Ethan Page, who got a pretty strong reaction from the crowd, wants to represent Canada while winning the All-Atlantic Championship. So, coming out of this, I feel like they're setting up Morrissey to get the Wardlow push that came out of the Pinnacle, where he'll be like the big singles guy, I guess, coming out of this. I feel like I can see it. Again, Morrissey did some great work at Impact. He is not Big Cass anymore. He's a completely different person. I think there's an interesting route to go. Again, you can either just rehash the same thing with Wardlow, where, you know, he gets turned on and he's the babyface coming out of this, or you set him up to be like a monster heel and he's the one who turns, like, way down the line. But regardless, it is interesting that he was the only one that they didn't mention a title for, so I am curious about the direction for Morrissey, but I am excited to see him. The Gun Club, I think they have a really good story on their hands possibly here. We already have an established story with them and the Acclaimed. The Acclaimed are most likely about to win the AEW World Tag Team titles. I feel like Gun Club versus the Acclaimed at Full Gear makes sense. That being said, if it's not a multi-man match and it's just those two teams, that's a huge, huge test for the Gun Club to see if they can deliver on a big stage like that, especially after the Acclaim just had one of the best tag matches in like AEW history with Swerve and Our Glory at All Out. So if they think they're ready, then I'm all for it. And again, they have a story ready to go. So we'll see. Lee Moriarty, I am a big fan of Lee. I like his new look. I like the dyed hair. And if Garcia is going face, I feel like Garcia versus Lee Moriarty for the Pure Championship should be a ton of fun. And that leaves Ethan Page, somebody who myself, Ryan, and Angela are all very high on. They've loved him in Impact, and Ryan has been clamoring for something for Ethan Page for so long. And I think we're finally going to get it. We know that AEW is heading to Canada in October. And we'll get to it in a bit, but we did have Ethan Page destroying Luigi Primo later tonight and declaring that he hates the comedy acts. He's facing Danhausen on Rampage. Orange Cassidy is set to face Pac for the All-Atlantic Championship next week. I think Orange Cassidy beats Pac, and then I think Ethan Page beats Orange Cassidy in Canada and wins his first title. If I was booking it, that's the way I would go. It just seems like that's set up for like the actual story. And it makes a lot of sense to me. And, you know, it accomplishes a number of things. Pac no longer has 2 titles. Orange Cassidy finally gets a championship, which I think a lot of people want. And then Ethan Page gets a big, like, home country win in Canada. They crown a Canadian champion in Canada. And the firm gets a championship. I feel like this does a lot to help legitimize this group and to elevate Ethan Page. So, yeah, interesting stuff. I don't think this like hit perfectly, but I think I like everybody in the group besides like the Gun Club. I do think the Colt 45 is a great finisher from Colton Gunn though. But we'll wait and see. I have faith that they have a plan with this. And if my idea for Ethan Page comes true, I'll be very happy. If they go the route of going with the Gun Club versus the Acclaimed for Full Gear, that's a great story. I hope Morrissey gets something, and Lee Moriarty versus Daniel Garcia sounds great. So I'm pretty excited to see the possibilities of where this can go. I hope this doesn't just turn into the Pinnacle, where it's just kind of a faction that exists, but then they just start slowly not existing. But I guess we'll see. Up next, we had Jay Lethal versus Jungle Boy in a singles match. Is coming after Jungle Boy lost to Christian Cage at All Out. Jungle Boy's back gives out during an attempted vertical suplex. The lethal injection gets looked for. Jungle Boy counters with a lariat and drops Lethal with a sheer drop brainbuster for a near fall as Sanjay Dutt leaps up onto the apron. Both go up top as Lethal takes Jungle Boy off the middle rope with a Russian leg sweep. An elbow drop from Lethal scores for a big 2 count as he goes for a pump kick, but Jack transitions to the snare trap. Lethal fights to the bottom rope, but Jungle Boy drags him back to the center. Sanjay gets up onto the apron again, and we have a roll-up from Lethal for another close near fall, as Jay then looks for the figure 4, but Jungle Boy counters back into the snare trap, and Lethal taps out. Short little match here. Jungle Boy wins, and right call. Alex Marvez is backstage talking about how AEW will be in New York City next week and how they're known for their pizza, and he introduces someone known for their pizza skills, Luigi Primo, and he comes in twirling his pizza, and as soon as he begins speaking, Ethan Page runs in and kicks him in the face, saying that he's the only person who takes things seriously around here. Danhausen shows up, and we set up a match between him and Ethan Page for Rampage. What a segment. This is the perfect cameo. I'm sure some people are going to be like, oh, why are we wasting time on this? This is literally... Luigi Primo was on screen for, I think, 5 seconds. It's perfectly okay. This dude went viral. They were in New York. And they used it to set up a match between 2 AEW talents. Perfectly acceptable. And I'm okay with it. Hey, man, Luigi Primo's now been on national TV. His stock's been raised even more. I'm sure they might use him on, like, Dark or something. We have a short video recapping Darby Allin performing a tricycle stunt for Nitro Circus over the weekend. Matt Hardy cuts off the video as he gives some congratulations to Darby, brings up his match with Jeff a few months ago, and says that Darby has been both one of his biggest allies and one of his biggest enemies in AEW, and now Matt is looking to claw his way back to the top of AEW, and he challenged Darby to a match on Rampage this week. Pretty straightforward and to the point. After this, we had Powerhouse Hobbs coming out here for a squash match. Really good reaction for Hobbs, too. He immediately kills a New York-based jobber. I forget what this guy's name was, I'm going to be honest. With the spine buster for the win. He gets on the mic after the match as the crowd chants, "We want Ricky." Hobbs states that at All Out, he beat Ricky Starks in 4 minutes and 35 seconds after spending 21 months in the trenches with Starks. Now that the chapter with Ricky is done, it's time to open a new chapter in the Book of Hobbs. Starting tonight. And as he says this, Ricky Starks makes his way into the arena through the crowd to a very big reaction. Ricky gets in the ring and takes it to Hobbs. We get a little brawl here before Ricky nails him with the microphone as Hobbs retreats out of the ring with a bloody mouth as Starks poses in the ring. I think it was the right call to have Hobbs beat Ricky at the pay-per-view. Ricky has been over for some time now, and I don't think the loss hurt him as long as he gets to come back, which we're seeing this is continuing. If this was Hobbs just ran through Ricky at the pay-per-view and then these two were done, then yeah, that would have been an issue, but I don't think that was ever the case. This felt like this was always going to be a longer program, and rightfully so. These guys deserve it. But Hobbs beating Ricky at the pay-per-view 100% elevated him, and that was what was needed. So good call on the booking to have Hobbs win over Ricky, and that it was just a decisive victory at the pay-per-view. I'm excited for round 2 when these guys hopefully get much more time. We have a promo from Death Triangle with Pac saying that no man can deny their momentum. Alex Abrahantes arrives and says that the time is now for the Lucha Brothers to recapture the AEW Tag Team titles. They have a match against Swerve and Our Glory. That match is up next. And then we go to it, the Lucha Brothers versus Swerve and Our Glory for the AEW World Tag Team Championship. Swerve comes out to boos as Keith enters to cheers. The dynamic between these two is fully cemented, with Swerve now just basically being a full-out heel. Swerve and Phoenix start out with Swerve sending Phoenix flying with a springboard Hurricane Rana as Keith Lee tags in. He eats a number of chops from Phoenix before leveling him with a massive overhead chop. We come back from break, and Swerve has Phoenix locked with a gory special, as Phoenix then flies off the ropes with a heel kick. Penta gets in with a hot tag, taking down Strickland with a sling blade, and nailing a backstabber. Keith gets in to try and stop the offense, as Penta takes Keith down with a sling blade. The Maiden Penta gets hit on Swerve, but Keith Lee just throws Phoenix through the ropes and onto Penta to break up the pin. Very unique pin breakup there. Penta attempts the Fear Factor, but Strickland gets out and tags in Keith Lee, who catches Phoenix off the top rope with a backbreaker. At some point, we got a "This is awesome" chant from the crowd. We have a headbutt to Penta as Swerve goes high, looking for the Swerve Stomp combo, but Penta and Phoenix take down Keith. We have a huge springboard Spanish fly from Phoenix to Swerve, and then out of nowhere, we have a Canadian Destroyer to Keith Lee for a crazy near fall. So the crowd goes apeshit. And this gets just a crazy near fall. Swerve sends Phoenix flying off the top rope to the floor as Keith Lee drops Penta with the Big Bang Catastrophe. And Swerve and Our Glory retain. This ended up being a pretty crazy match out of nowhere. The final portion of this was just bonkers. And again, this felt like this was... I'm sure some people are going to be... I'm not throwing Ryan under the bus, but he did question in our group chat why the Lucha Brothers had this tag team shot. Genuinely, I don't think this had anything to do with the rankings. This was just giving Swerve and Our Glory one last definitive win in their title reign. I'm okay with it. Out come the Acclaimed after the match for a huge pop. Max Caster cuts his own music and says that if Swerve ever interrupts the rap again, he will beat his ass. Swerve should keep nut-hugging every famous person he knows, and he better make sure that Keith shows up in New York City next week so that the uncrowned champions can officially become the AEW World Tag Team Champions, as Anthony Bowen shouts out that everyone loves the Acclaimed. And I think everyone is excited for this rematch at Arthur Ashe. And if the Acclaimed actually do get coronated champs, oh my god, that building's going to explode. Marvez is backstage, waiting to interview the Lucha Brothers and Pac, talking about the bump in the road that just happened. Pac takes issue with that statement, saying that they are the AEW Trios Champions, and he is the first AEW Double Champion. And out of nowhere, Orange Cassidy hits the orange punch straight to the face of Pac backstage, out of nowhere, and says that he isn't going to be the Double Champion for long. This was a very unprovoked attack. This was just Orange Cassidy showing up and sucker punching Pac. I don't know if we're supposed to read into this anymore, but this was genuinely as far as I'm aware, this was a heel move on Orange Cassidy's part. This wasn't Pac attacked him earlier in the show and he was coming back. Unless I missed something last week. I mean, obviously, Pac and the Death Triangle defeated Orange Cassidy and the Best Friends last week to win the Trios titles, but this is still very unprovoked. So I am curious to see if there's going to be something more coming from this. Are we heading towards a possible heel turn for the Best Friends? What would that even look like? I don't know. But my assumption is that I still think Orange Cassidy beats Pac next week and then loses to Ethan Page in Canada, as we had Ethan Page, mention that he is taking on these comedy characters and people that aren't taking it seriously. So yeah, I feel like that makes sense to me that, Cassidy would get his win back on Pac from 2020, and then we move on to Ethan Page and we elevate Ethan Page. And then if you're going to turn the Best Friends heel, which I still don't know how you do that or if you would want to do that, then you do it after Cassidy loses the belt. Just another big loss for that team. So we'll see. That takes us to Toni Storm and Athena versus Britt Baker and Serena Deeb. Before the match, we get a recap of the angle that they shot on Dark, where Rebel and Britt Baker attacked Hikaru Shida and it wrote her off. This was literally just because Shida had dates in Japan booked. And then a promo from Toni and Athena addressing it. And Toni suggests that Britt needs to find something better to do and should worry about her issues with Jamie Hayter instead of attacking Toni's friends and being in her business. Storm and Deeb start the match off as Serena tries to out-wrestle Toni right off the bat, taking her down with holds as Toni fights out of each hold that gets locked in, coming to a stalemate out of the gates for a good reception from the crowd. Deeb gets Toni in the corner, firing off hard chops to Toni's chest before Toni comes back with even harder chops. She tags in Athena, who comes off the top rope. She takes down Deeb with a corner drop kick, following up with a handspring elbow strike in the corner, and then a double knee arm breaker before going up high. Baker distracts her on the apron here, which allows Deeb to cut out the leg of Athena and gives the heels control as Serena just then repeatedly slams the leg of Athena on the apron. Back from commercial, Athena gets the hot tag to Toni, and Storm looks for Sweet Cheeks music, but Britt gets out as Toni then nails the Tornado DDT to Baker on the at ringside. Back in the ring, Britt catches Toni with a sling blade as Athena and Deeb both tag in. The two trade blows with elbows and forearms before Athena springboards and gets caught in an arm breaker in the center of the ring. Athena powers up and goes for a power bomb to Deeb, but Serena gets out before Athena fires back with a Meteora. Toni then goes high to take out Serena with a crossbody, but Deeb counters into a single leg Boston Crab. Athena lights up Serena with kicks and elbow strikes before Baker cuts it off with a huge super kick to Athena. We get a jackknife pin from Deeb, but Athena breaks it up with a senton before getting sent into the steps at ringside. Serena and Toni are left in the ring, and the Deeb tox gets looked for, but Toni escapes. Rebel then gets onto the apron to distract the ref as Baker gets onto the ring with a chair, and the heels send Toni into it face first as Serena rolls up Toni for the win. It's kind of shocking that they pinned the champion like this. Post-match, Athena lays out Deeb as Britt takes down Athena with the curb stomp. Britt then grabs the chair again as Jamie Hayter runs out to a very big reaction from the crowd. She pulls it away from Britt, and it looks like she's going to tease hitting her, but instead she hits Toni, and then she gets into it verbally with Britt in the ring. I'm sure some people are going to read this the wrong way, but it just feels like natural storytelling. Britt, the heel, screwed Jamie Hayter, another heel, in the title match at All Out. Their friendship seems to be over, but that does not make Jamie Hayter a good guy. There were so many people online complaining that Jamie Hayter wasn't Toni Storm's partner tonight. What storyline sense would it have made for Jamie Hayter, somebody who in storyline hates Toni Storm, to have Britt Baker turn on her and that somehow just creates a friendship and partnership with Toni Storm? It would have made no sense. This feels like, if you're going to do babyface Jamie Hayter, you have to gradually get to it just because of, who the champion is right now. You can't just be like, oh, yeah, I'm friends with Toni now. So this feels like, and we're doing, it was announced right after this, but we're doing a 4-way at Grand Slam next week. I would assume Jamie costs Britt, and that's what kicks off their actual rivalry, probably heading into Full Gear as one of the other women's matches on that show. As for the match itself, I thought, pretty fun. Not as good as some of the other women's tag matches we've gotten in the past. But I did enjoy this a bit. And it set up we got an unpredictable finish here. And it set up a nice little 4-way for Grand Slam next week. So, AEW Rampage this week has Samoa Joe versus Josh Woods for the ROH Television Championship. Ethan Page versus Danhausen, Penelope Ford versus Willow Nightingale, which actually should be pretty good, and Matt Hardy versus Darby Allin. AEW Dynamite Grand Slam has Pac versus Orange Cassidy for the AEW All-Atlantic Championship, Toni Storm versus Serena Deeb versus Athena versus Britt Baker for the AEW Interim Women's World Championship, Swerve in Our Glory versus the Acclaimed 2 for the AEW World Tag Team Championship, and I already said Danielson won, so Jon Moxley versus Bryan Danielson 2 for the AEW Championship Tournament Finals, and announced for AEW Rampage Grand Slam, Action Bronson versus Angelo Parker and Matt Menard. And that sends us to the main event of the show, which is Chris Jericho versus Bryan Danielson 2 in the AEW Tournament of Champions, Round 2. Danielson fires off quick, hot offense to start here, sending Jericho to the floor and nailing Jericho with a flying knee off the apron. Bryan goes after the wrist as dueling chants come out for Let's Go Bryan Y2J, with the crowd being much, much hotter for this match than the all-out crowd was. Body kicks from Danielson as he goes for the buzzsaw kick, but Jericho ducks and then nails him with a release German suplex to break up Danielson's big offensive run here at the start. Following up with a drop kick that sends Bryan to the floor. We have a big chop battle that breaks out from Jericho and Danielson, with Bryan just lighting up Chris into the corner, and then flipping off the ropes in the corner as the two collide in the center of the ring, with crossbodies as it goes to picture-in-picture. More chops from the two as Jericho catches Bryan with a codebreaker out of nowhere, but Danielson nails a Busaiku knee after as both go down. Danielson goes for a suplex over the ropes, but he lands awkwardly on the floor and starts selling the foot and knee as Jericho then comes out and just starts slamming Bryan's foot on the floor, ripping the kick pads and the boot off of Danielson before wrapping his leg around the ring post. And Jericho locks in the figure 4 around the ring post as well, and then chop blocks Bryan back at the ring before dropping him with a knee breaker, just taking him to town here. Danielson eventually fights him off and then hobbles across the ring looking for a knee, but he trips and just lands into Jericho's grasp as he locks in the walls of Jericho. Hard elbows from Jericho as he tries to keep the foot locked. We have a roll-up from Danielson, but Jericho kicks out at 2. A dragon screw from Jericho takes down Danielson again as he locks in the figure 4 in the center of the ring. Danielson fights out and he tries to get the label lock, just laying in forearms across the face before locking it in. Bryan then hooks in his fingers in the nostrils and locks it in firmly as Jericho taps out for a monster reaction. And Bryan Danielson versus Jon Moxley 2 is set for the finals, and we will have a new AEW World Champion crown next week at Grand Slam at Arthur Ashe Stadium. And it's a pretty big match. Again, Danielson versus Moxley 2. The last time we saw them face off was Revolution, where we formed the Blackpool Combat Club. So, Moxley won that one. I guess we'll see if Danielson comes out on top this time. I thought this was a pretty solid show. I definitely think the highlights were the tag team title match and the main event. I thought the women's tag match was pretty solid. The opening match was good, not great. Jungle Boy versus Lethal was fun but forgettable. And we'll see where the stuff with MJF and the firm go. But yeah. Grand Slams next week. We will have our normal coverage. Maybe I can get Joey on the podcast, and we'll have the two of us there to talk about it. But that's going to do it for me. So thanks for tuning in to another review for AEW Dynamite. If you're new here, consider subscribing. Help support us. And we'll talk to you in the next episode. So thanks for listening once again. Adios.